Please welcome today's presenter, Mr. Bird.
It's really hard to follow up on the beach day. Morning, guys. So I've been very fortunate to be alive for about 31 years now, and the theme of my talk, the overarching theme, is I'm going to share with you some stories from my life and the lessons that I've learned from a lot of them. Hopefully at some point along the way you see yourself as a character in some of these stories, or you can relate to it, or you know someone who's been through something that you can relate to. Life is full of ups and downs, and in the time that I've been around, I'm going to share with you some of the ones that I've experienced. To give you guys a sense of what the world was like when I was around your age, going into high school. I was in grade 8 in BC. This is what happened at the start of school. And for a lot of you guys, you might look at this, if you've never seen this picture before, and it almost looks like it's photoshopped. Like it looks surreal. And that happened on a Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. That's a plane about to fly into the South Tower in New York City, the World Trade Center. Okay, so this is an event that happened before any of you were even born, which is kind of why I wanted to bring it into focus initially. If you haven't actually lived through an event of world magnitude, until you actually do, it's kind of hard to really envision it, but that is something that I woke up to on a Tuesday morning, going to high school. On a lighter note, 3 days before that, this photo was taken, and unfortunately the screen is a little small, but if you can bear with me for a second, this was our Bantam, our grade 8 football team in 2001 at Hansworth Secondary School, where I went to school. And that's me. 3/4 length socks were not in style for another 15 years. And I was about 4'5", about 65 pounds. All these guys are a little bigger. Oh. The gentleman here I met on the first day of school. His name was Michel Olivier. Came from Gatineau. He'd been out on the West Coast for a long time. He was the Bantam high school coach. He asked if I would join his football team. I said I'd go home and I'd talk to my mom about it, and she said no. And so that was the end of that. He asked me if I would still join the football team as a statistician, and that's how I got my start in football when I was 13. The rest of these guys, a lot of fun. They've been part of my story ever since. But I want you guys to keep in mind Coach Olivier as we kind of go through the rest of the storyline. I've been very fortunate in that I've had a coaching career that's spanned a few different places, a few different languages. I went to McGill as a student. I became a video coordinator there, which is really like, if you want to get into coaching, I highly recommend you go this route. You're really below the bottom rung on the ladder. You're kind of like the ground the ladder is sitting on. But it really taught me how to teach a game, taught me how to interact with different people, and as I became more and more involved in coaching, I went to some really cool places. EMS football, some of you guys have played EMS or have heard of EMS. It's a summer program that was started by Coach Morovich, the older one, and that's actually how my Selwyn connection became formed 10 years ago. In addition to what I've done here, I've had a chance to be able to coach over 1,000 different guys, actually, in a mix of high school and cégep. Coached on the South Shore at Champlain-Saint-Lambert, coached at 14MichaelBird, which is, I'm going to get to that in a second. And most recently I was at John Abbott, where we've had a number of our own guys actually go on. It's been neat to see guys continue their careers as student athletes. What you probably noticed in the previous photo is I'm obviously not in shoulder pads, so I've never played the sport that I coach. And that's because I was born with a medical complication in my neck, which had to be operated on. I spent about the first 5 months of my life in Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, and I was followed medically for about 4 years until we kind of got the all clear. I never got the all clear to play contact sports. That was kind of a ban on that for life. But the reason I've been able to go ahead and do this without having kind of gone through what I think a lot of you would imagine is the step of, to become a coach, you should play a sport first. The way I've been able to kind of jump over that is for 2 reasons. One is that coaching and playing, being an athlete, are not the same thing. But I think the more important reason that I've been able to do it is because I just simply didn't say no to myself. I didn't talk myself out of it. And I think we do that all the time. in school, we do it in sports, we do it in our social life. We don't feel like we can ask a person out, we don't feel like we can pass a test. Ultimately, it's usually us that sets the strongest limits in our lives. And when I've been able to shut down that voice, because I still have that voice that says no sometimes, I've been able to go on and do what I've really wanted to in life. So that's the first lesson I wanted to share with you. One of the greatest leaders I've ever coached was a running back, John Abbott. He was a very, very celebrated leader of our football team, graduated a few years ago. And he said these two beautiful words, I think the two best words I've ever heard in leadership, which was just simply, lead yourselves. We hope that other people will go first, or we look for people to blame when things don't go our way. And at the end of the day, if we lead ourselves first, the rest of our issues tend to go away. Don't be someone who waits for another person to go first. Lead yourself. Pain gets a bad rap, but it can be really, really motivating. And I'll give you an example of that. This happened about 7 years ago here in the Macaulay Staff Lounge on the other side of Stanton. I walked in, Mr. Pruneau said to me, "Bonjour, Monsieur Bird, comment ça va?" And my response at that time was that. Okay, so it's okay, you can laugh now. I'm inviting that. If that went over your head, here's the translation. "Hello, Mr. Bird, how are you today?" "Yes." Okay, that was how bad my French was at that time. I was about 23 years old. Okay, I grew up in Ontario and on the West Coast, as I said earlier on, so French is not really something that's been natural for me. So I decided it was time, there was enough pain for me to change. We change when the pain of staying the same is greater than what we perceive the pain of changing will be. Does that make sense? If we're not happy with who we are right now, and we think we can go on a journey, we go on a journey. And this is where I went to. I went to Cégep de Trois-Rivières, where I coached for 5 months. Mainly in French. J'ai eu l'occasion de coacher un gros nombre de joueurs qui étaient absolument francophones. On parle d'une ville qui, entre Montréal et Québec, la ville de Québec, il n'y a pas beaucoup d'anglais qui parlaient. And this is where I basically grew up in terms of being able to live a bilingual life. If I can do it as an adult, I'm sure a lot of you guys can do this as teenagers. I'm not saying it's easy. It's taken a long time, but it's possible. Along the way, I had some really cool opportunities. I was interviewed by their local paper. It was fun to kind of be living this storyline as a character in a place that doesn't see a whole lot of English kids show up. I had a really fun opportunity to get my ass kicked by Coach Luca and the John Abbott Islanders after I talked a lot of smack to him throughout the season. Didn't really go the Diablo's way on that day. But it's fun to be able to have relationships that go with you throughout life. That's the main take-home point from that story for me, is that the day that I stopped saying no to my ability to speak French and change my attitude, the outcome of being able to be a French speaker actually emerged. Okay, and it's still going, I still have that belief and I have an excitement around it, but attitude your mindset has to support where you're going in life. Anything that you want to do. If you are aligned mentally to go out and do that, I'll tell you this, if you don't have that attitude, good luck finding the outcome. Jean-Philippe Chartier was the third guy on the right in that photo, the guy on the right, excuse me, in the photo in the paper, was someone that I was rooming with in Trois-Rivières in basically like a social house. We shared a 2-room apartment, not 2-bedroom, but a 2-room apartment. And he said to me, there's no such thing as bad experience. There are experiences that are bad. There are moments that will be challenging in our lives, but when we're about to embark on something, there's always something to be gained from it, no matter how it goes. So I've always looked at that as kind of my guiding principle. If I'm about to step into something that's really new and scary, remembering that there are no bad experiences at the end of the day is what's kept me moving forward. This is a story I really like to tell. I graduated from high school. I was a pretty strong student. I got into McGill University. I went there just before I was about to turn 18. And these letters on the screen are the series of grades that I got in one of my university courses, Calculus 2. Okay, so FDFA means I failed the course 3 times in university before being able to graduate. Ultimately, it goes back to the attitude precedes outcome part. It's not that I was incapable of being able to do math. The A, fortunately, at the end kind of validated that for me, but my own attitude held me back from being able to do what I had gone there to do in the first place. How well do you learn from your setbacks? If you go out and you repeat the same mistakes over and over again and expect the same different result, you're going to get an FDFA in a whole bunch of things in life. Failure gets a bad rap. I know some guys are like, I absolutely cannot fail in this course, or in this year, or on this team. But failure and setbacks are a natural part of life, and they do not always show up on a transcript, but they show up in different ways and present opportunities for us to grow. How well do you learn from your setbacks? Ted Scott was a guy that I met when I was around your age. He was on something called a Council of Eminent Persons, and the council that he was on lobbied the government of South Africa to release Nelson Mandela from prison through economic sanctions. So Ted was someone he was a very high-ranking member of the Anglican Church. Not that that's really my domain, but he was someone who had traveled the world, seen a lot of different people, and he told me this when I was about 14. We think we're doing a better job than we actually are of connecting with people. It's a seaside town, north of Vancouver. It looks out onto Vancouver Island, which is that landmass on the left in the background. It's a beautiful town, and it's where my parents live. On January 22nd, this is where it gets hard. This is me being stuck on the tarmac, trying to get out of the city on January 22nd. I got a phone call on January 21st, a voicemail coming out of a band basketball practice. I checked it was from my dad. He said, it's time to book the plane. I spoke a year ago, give or take, a few weeks, at Terry Fox, and I spoke about my mom. My mom, when I visited her last Christmas, kind of looked like a typical chemotherapy patient. Lost a lot of weight, quite white, no hair, weak, tired often. But she seemed fine. She's going through her 3rd round of 4 rounds of chemotherapy, and the way chemo works is you kill a whole pile of cells in your body, healthy ones and cancerous ones, and you hope that at the end of the day, the body count wins out in your favor and you have more health in you than cancer. Her treatment was going fine until early January. So this was a Tuesday morning. My mom's condition changed rapidly on the Saturday, the weekend right before this. And I was going from one of the best band and basketball seasons ever, which is a lot of fun, and doing a whole bunch of other things here, obviously, to all of a sudden being singularly focused on this. The plane was 3 hours late getting off the ground, and so I was going to miss my connecting flight, which was going to be by a float plane. My sister, seeing this, she was already in Seychelles, booked me this, which was very kind of her. As you can imagine, though, on a day where you can't actually see where you're going, this was a little bit scary. I had a real cowboy of a pilot who said we would just fly low beneath the fog. And so at 200 feet, which is low enough to hit most of the houses in Westmount, we made it from Vancouver to Seychelles, to the hospital where my mom was staying. My mom passed away on Wednesday, the day after, at 8:06 in the morning Pacific. We do a lot of things to try and set you guys up for success, however you find that here. I hope you realize that we are also trying to build you for the moments of adversity, because they will come. And maybe for some of you they already have. Okay, my heart goes out to you. I figured if I could speak at this, I could speak at anything. This is my mom's memorial. I took this picture as a tribute to her. She was someone who loved connection. She was better on social media than I was, that's for sure. To be able to be here and in the company of all of these people who come, many of them come from a long way away. My family is split between Ontario and BC. It's inspired me to continue to tell this story about appreciating the people you have in your life and while you have them. My mom's greatest gift, and it was propagated by some coaches and mentors that I've had along the way, is this. This is why I like to be a coach. This is why I love coaching. The people who believe in who you are and what you're doing are the most valuable people in your life. Okay, and when they go away, hopefully you take that belief with you, because you will not carry everybody with you forever. But to be told that someone believes in you for doing something or for who you are, to me, whether you give it or receive it, that is the greatest gesture that a human can make to another person. This little random scattered plot kind of sums up my life for the last 18 years or so. We can draw lines that connect the dots, and when you look at me being here today, just in the bottom left, to meeting Coach Borovich, which is what kind of built this line of events, right? Mr. Pruneau and my conversation in the Mac Staff Lounge started the connection back while I was at McGill. And it's not football that brought me to Montreal, but it's football that's kept me in Montreal. And that started with Coach Olivier. I'll leave you guys on this final message, and that's that you will do things now in your life that will affect others around you now and people in the future who aren't even alive yet. Mr. Wills talked about it in his speech, that we are obviously in a time of great challenge when it comes to our planet. And you will impact what the world looks like. You will. And you'll do it in ways that you couldn't have even thought were possible. My mom, many years before I was born, had an event in her life that ultimately would lead me along this storyline and in front of you today. Okay? And that was that Coach Olivier and my mom actually dated when they were young adults. Don't think it was an overly long affair, but it is ultimately the mutual connection that brought me into the world of football, brought me to Montreal, kept me in Montreal, and put me in front of you. And that happened probably around 15 years before I was born. It's hard to grasp how meaningful your life is. I hope that I've given you guys some insights in terms of what you can do. I hope to continue to live a pretty long life and do a lot more living. I encourage you guys to lead lives that tell stories and help other people along the way, whether they're alive and with us today or are still to come. Thanks for hearing me out, guys.